Welcome to the panel show's Down the Track program. We're coming to you from Willowbank Raceway a couple of days ahead of the New Year's Thunder. With me today we've got Phil Lamartina from Lamartina Family Racing and one of the real heroes of the early days of Top Fuel in Australia, Larry Ormsby. Welcome guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're looking forward to a pretty good event this weekend. Drag racing with the 400 Thunder Series has really stepped up with the promotion that's going on. Willowbank, it's the first of the year. The holiday atmosphere. What happens though when for the teams, they have to turn around and just concentrate on the job, don't they?
I think this weekend the weather, I suppose, will be a deciding factor, especially maybe just with the heat and everything like that. But you know, normally Willowbank puts on a really good track for us to race on, so we don't have too many concerns, and it's through the night and the atmosphere should be great, especially, you know, being up here at Willowbank with that nice mild summer's night, so I think it should be pretty cool.
And Larry, you've got a special task this weekend, not driving anymore of course, but Grand Marshal of the event.
Yeah, well that's a bit of a thrill actually. I was quite pleasantly surprised when it was suggested, and delighted to be up here in an official capacity. And it's been some time since I've been, at the track. You know, I normally used to come for Winter Nationals with Rolly Lane. And so it's been a while since I've heard the thunder, felt the shakes. And I think it's fantastic what you've organised with Phil for me.
Well, we're going to have a little look today back at Top Fuel in the early days of Australian drag racing and to where we've come today. Larry, first thing I'm going to ask, can you remember the first time you stomped the pedal on a Top Fuel car?
Yes, I can very well. We'd been driving, sedans. I was a Ford driver, and then I was offered to drive in the Rattler, which was a front-engine 331 Chev with a supercharger on the top, and I was invited to drive it, and with big mouth me, I actually said yes. I got it, and I said to John Fleming, I said, Flemmo, I said, how do you see? I can't see. They've got this supercharger right in front of my face. He said, well, it's a trick. He said, you've actually got to do your right eye's got to look at the white line and your left eye's got to look at the centre line. And I thought about that for a while. I said, so you mean you just close your eyes and hang on? He said, well, that works as well.
What was the feeling like that?
Well, the feeling like going from a sedan to even, an alcohol front engine dragster was pretty sensational. When we're doing about 120 mile an hour, all of a sudden that thing did 180 mile an hour, not very quickly, but it got there. And then I decided that it might be an idea to be a bit safer for me if I ended up having my own car rear engine, so we bought a Woody Gumler chassised fuel car and decided that I needed to do an apprenticeship. So I probably spent 15 months as an alcohol car. And it would do 741, 180 mile an hour, to do 742, 181 mile an hour, to do 743, 182.1 mile an hour, So after 18 months of that, I reckon I'd had enough. And so we decided we're going to go Top Fuel. I'm sorry I'm taking too much of the time here, but the question was, what was it like? Well, Cole Russell, my mechanic, and I, we sort of thought we had it all right. And we had all these hoses, they're going everywhere, Phil. And Cole says, I'm going to have to ring Noel Eggins, because he knew Noel pretty well. So they were down for the weekend at Calder, and so they came out to give us a look, and they said, well, all those hoses go somewhere, so they helped us replumb it, and they gave us what was, just an easy tune. So Jim Reed said to Cole, he said he'll have his foot out, but before he goes past the tree. And that run was a 670 at 205 miles an hour, and it was the most exciting. Sex is great, but I tell you, the first run of a Top Fuel car beats it, hands down.
Larry, I'm impressed you can remember both. Phil, you're a bit of an exception to the rule. Most people work their way through different classes of drag racing. I think you ran a street car on the quarter mile and then stepped into a Top Fuel car. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, how did it come about? You're right. We never even went down the quarter mile on the street car. It was just the local 8th mile track at Mildura, and then I was working on the fuel car, when Darren was driving, and then we decided that I'd like to jump in the seat, and obviously with the licensing process and all that sort of stuff, it was in Sydney. And I've been around the cars, you know, plenty of times, and went to Frank Hawley's a couple of months before and done all that sort of thing, and that sort of got a bit of an idea because, like you said, I hadn't driven anything. So ended up, it was in Sydney. I do remember it. It was, they strapped me in the car, and I'd been in the car before, obviously, just sat in it and all that sort of stuff, but they're pushing me through the tunnel, and that was the realisation. I can't, there's no turning back here. I'm actually got to do this. You know, there's no, oh, hang on a sec, boys, not feeling it today, let's go home. But it was interesting, you know, like you said, you've been around it long enough and you run it through your mind enough times that once the car started, everything else sort of disappeared and you focus on what you had to do. But yeah, no, stepping on that throttle, nothing really can prepare you for that. And you know, the story with the licensing process, I was only allowed to go to 60 and I went to 330. And I got a bit of a slap on the wrist for that one, but collecting a bit of data, but that was, after 0.8 of a second, you can just feel that clutch just kick in, just sort of sink you back in the seat. And then you just off it, and you sort of overwhelming, but a bit disappointing too, because you sort of get off and you think, oh, geez, that felt good. I would love that to keep going. But yeah, so then just build it gradually, but over the finish line, pulling the chutes, that's just, man, I felt, 10 foot tall and bulletproof at the end of a run, after a good run. The adrenaline just, you could actually sometimes feel it running through your veins.
Addictive?
Somewhat. There's a bit of a comparison to sex, I think it's a drug. I've never been on them, so I've never really been addicted. So, but it is a drug, 100% addiction, and look forward to the next rush.
Larry, looking back to your time with that car, it became one of the most iconic top fuel dragsters in the country. Ran with, I think, Bob Jane on the side for a while, but you're always known as the Big O.
Yeah.
Rivalries, I mean, you mentioned Jim Reed before, there were a few other guys around as well, but what are the rivalries that really stand out for you?
Reed and I, we just seemed to, we hooked together as friends and competitors. And we seemed to just have a sense of when we're at the start line, we didn't do a burnout and the other guy did a burnout. We just burn out together, we back together. It's almost like you watched, we just had that sense of knowing that's what the crowd liked. And Rodney Snellman, I just noticing the memorial to Rodney, he used to complain, he said, you used to smoke the start line in that bad, he said, had to lay down to actually see us when we come up into the pre-stage or full stage. So yeah, and the thing with Reedy and I was that we really wanted to beat one another every time we raced. And so if he was missing some bits, our store was his and vice versa. And in fact, our last championship, which was up at Surfers, we had, we'd run the mains in the crank, and we didn't have a spare crank. So Jim ended up having his daughter pick up this shiny thing that's very heavy. You'll have to get your boyfriend to help you wrap it up with all this rag, and he talked her into actually boxing it and getting it on a plane. And Colin and I went and picked it up and laid the crank and got that. And that particular run, I beat Jimmy at the finals in his crank.
And was that the meeting, I can recall you towing to the start line at Surfers Paradise with Colin Russell sitting on the roll cage, working on it as you were actually still going to the start line?
Yeah, well we had to. If you didn't get out the gate at Surfers, Phil, the access to the start line was about quarter way down the track, and they take a group of vehicles out and they go up behind, under the Dunlop Bridge, turn around and sit and wait. Because then they shut the gate and all the racing went on. So it was interesting. If you didn't get out the gate,
if you missed your call, you missed your call. You weren't there. It was a circuit race track with a straight, and we used to drag race on the straight. So those days, obviously, the glory days. If I asked Jim, he'd say how many times he beat you, but I wouldn't know a head-to-head figure between you.
It was a funny scenario. There were three of us at the time. There was Jim, who was the king, right? King Jim. I actually was snapping at his heels a fair amount of times, and then John Marr came out as well. Now, the funny scenario is, I run John 17 times, I think, in our career. I beat him 16 times and threw a blower belt on the 17th time at half track. Jim always actually just about got me, I think, being fair, about a 2-to-1 ratio. that didn't mean it was the championship. Sometimes the ratio worked for me as far as the championship was concerned. And then John seemed to be able to beat Reedy. Reedy seemed to beat me, and I seemed to be able to beat John Mayo. It was just a strange deal.
What about you, Phil? I mean, your time in the seat, that we've seen Americans come and go, we've seen a range of Australian drivers. Have your rivals been drivers or teams?
I would say driver, Phil Reid.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretty much my nemesis, I suppose, in the Black Mamba, and he was a bit of a he was a tough competitor. He's tough, and always his ratio would be probably up on me. It's funny, Larry talks about doing things together. Mine was with Dobbo, Alan Dobson. We would just have this uncanny ability to do the burnout together. He used to call us the Together Brothers. And we'd do the burnout, back up together, stage, and then full stage. And, it was funny. So I sort of had one up on him pretty much all the time with Dobbo, and I think Santo always used to have like an engine in there with my name on it. So if we met in the final, he'd just crack that case open and rip that engine out, and that's the Limited engine.
That was the carrot juicer.
Yeah, but a lot of times poor old Dobbo, he's mechanically, unfortunately, his car was just not quite there, and I'd see that bit of a glow. And I'd sort of beat him a lot of times, but Phil Reid, definitely Phil Reid in my career.
How did you feel back in November when you saw that Black Mamba roll back out into the burnout area?
Very interesting. I was on the start line, and it brought back a lot of memories and nearly tempted me to get back in the seat. Oh, geez, it was crazy, it was seeing him out there with that same car, and obviously with Bruce, get along with Bruce really well nowadays, and talk a lot, and to see them out there and basically doing their thing, and it was like, man, I should be out there racing him, because that's what I do. But it was cool to see that. Well,
you've stepped out of the seat now. You've got Kelly Betts behind the wheel, a real newcomer to Top Fuel, but I mean genetically she was. Started drag racing at 8 years old in a junior dragster, won a championship, has been really competitive in her modified cars, super comp cars. How do you see her as a Top Fuel driver now?
Yeah, I see her as potentially able to be, one of the probably, you don't want to use them words, the best and all that sort of stuff, but she's more than capable.
Natural talent.
Natural. You can see she was. We've never had somewhat of a driver, driving for us. I was doing the driving duties. Even earlier on with Darren, I suppose we never sort of built up enough rapport, long enough. But I can see Kelly is, a driver. Like the way she goes about and does things, she does things completely different the way I used to do it. I was probably one of the ones, maybe similar to a lot of other people. I don't really know, but I used to just wing it. Used to get up there and. Try not to think about it too much, but she's a very focused sort of girl, and she's going to be, very, very competitive, and she's going to win, hopefully a lot of races for us, and as long as we can give her a car that can do the job. And she's more than capable at the moment, and she's coming leaps and bounds, and like what you want to try and do is, bring her up to speed as quickly as possible, but I've got to still, fortunately enough, I've got my wife Sarah, she's, she can ground me pretty good, and, I've got to sometimes back off a little bit because you just want so much for her, and sometimes I can give her a little bit too much of an overload. So now what I've done is I can see she's capable, she knows what she's doing, I just back off and let her, if she wants to ask a question, she can ask, I'll answer it to the best of my ability, but for the fundamentals now she just needs to feel it through the seat of her pants, and she's got to just do it, and she's more than capable.
Well, what we saw at Nitro up north in Darwin, of course, was that you guys aren't out on a development program here. You're out there and running fast, straight up. Track record up there?
Yeah, look, it was close, I think. It didn't quite get the Rappers record up there, but what happened up in Darwin was, Richie come out and with that car and showed us a lot of potential in it, and we then licensed Kelly, and we got lost. I'll be honest with you, and it was a new car, new combination with the 60s, and we were struggling. So you know, I think Richie sort of spoiled us a little bit, you know, because it was great for him to come out here, but he gave us so much confidence in that car. So we had to go and find, we had to go and work for it, and that's what we've done. And then Darwin was more for us a little bit of a release, hopefully to get that, you know, that car back to where it needs to be. Anyway, the run, which we laugh about it a little bit now, but the second run she done out there, the car took off. It was on like a low 50, and the car sort of made a move she was in the right lane, made a move to the centre line, and she got off it, which, you know, she had to. I said, oh, something not quite right there. So it looked okay. So anyway, get back. And one thing I've learned as a driver, the data doesn't lie. So anyway, Aaron downloads the data, and I'm sitting there and had a bit of a look, and she had just, you know, it was quick. The car was quick. So she just rolled off the throttle a little bit, and when she didn't realise she'd done it. She's just subconsciously done it. And when she's rolled back on, she's dropped the cylinder and it's pushed her over, and she got off it. Well, I was probably a little bit animated in the sense that, you know, like I can see the potential of the car, and you can see it building momentum. So to her credit, she's known me well enough now already. She just said, Phil, just say it. Just say what you want to say and just leave it with it. Anyway, so I did. And to her credit, she
Copped it on the chin.
She copped it on the chin, went out there, ran a 58, come back, drove the wheels off it. Come back, and she sort of said, in your face. And I said, from that point there, I said, you know what? She's right.
You're right.
And she's, we went to Alice, and she's crazy because that last run that we broke the track record there, which was great, she was basically running along the wall, and she was just wheeling it back in. She wasn't going to get off it, and she ran the 300, which was great. No, sorry, just missed the 300, ran the 4, and it was good. So yeah, she's come of age as driving, and her reaction times are pretty cool too, so yeah.
Larry, looking at these days, the drivers around, you know, there's the whole new crop, isn't there?
Yes.
You know, well, one thing that I'm delighted that you have done, and this is the blatant commercial bit, but you've put together a book which is absolutely imperative, I think. What the record that you've made of the early days of Australian drag racing. I've only had a brief flick through this book of yours, but that's basically what it is. It's a Larry Ormsby show all the way through.
No, I started off thinking that's what I do. And then I thought at one stage I thought this is going to be bigger than the Magna Carta. You're going to need 2 men to pick it up.
Well, give us a look at it.
So what I did, I actually went about the business of doing what I call the forward years. So this is my start in the sport from the 289 XRGT to the XW, which was the car on the front cover. That was the most winningest car as a muscle car in that period, Phil. And then on to the XY. And then at the tail end of the book, I do a bit of an intro, a bit of a sell into, if I ever live long enough, that is, to what's following. So I then go back to, that was the front engine, that's the front engine.
Not sure we'll pick it up, but we'll.
Dragster to the Rattler. And then at the end, we were looking pretty good. We did a few things, and that's the colour scheme that was done for us by Herb Gross from Ford Motor Company. Of the Top Fuel car.
Okay, now business-wise, I mean, it was and it still is incredibly expensive to run a Top Fuel car, and I think you were doing it out of your business. When was your last run in the Top Fuel car, and do you remember it?
Well, yeah, the answer is sort of yes, because I'd reached a point where I couldn't afford to run the car in my business at the time. My businesses had slowed down a little bit. And so Steve Brown of Warlord fame was making some overtures to buy it and then have me drive it, which I thought was a fantastic deal. You know, suddenly drive the car you love to drive, put somebody else's name on it, and give him the bills, which is terrific. And we did that, and we were running against Jimmy Walton at Adelaide International Raceway, and Steve Brown owned both cars, and I had a parachute malfunction at Adelaide. I was on the infield. I knew what had happened, you know, that your conical spring. that if you're not careful in the way you close it up, it actually squeezes. So I think I know what it is. So I then tried to get off the track and bounce it out. We're just off the track. Well, but I was only doing about 230 miles an hour. They're not back in not in this 300 miles an hour. Anyway, I thought I was going to be successful, but I wasn't. And the bounce ended up with the car under the roll cage. So that was pretty much the last run for me, and it was the last run for that car.
Well, Phil, your last run, I mean, you didn't know that was going to be your last pass, and clearly you didn't know that the run here at Willowbank Raceway was going to be your last. But that was pretty dramatic. Can you just briefly talk us through it?
Oh, well, similar. Yeah, well, we had got a new chassis, and we tested it the week before at the winter's warm-up, and the first run on the Friday night shook the tyres, so we got off it, and the next day the car was running nice. Like we tested well and everything like that, and yeah, the chassis broke just before half track, and I suppose the rest is history. Done the same thing, broke me back, and a bit of rehab, and apart from that, I'm here. That's the main thing. And
how's it feel? I mean, you've got clearly itchy feet. We were just talking to you before, but do you still get the satisfaction of seeing that car run now?
Oh, 100%. Like, they say your role changes as team owner, but I was always the team owner before as well, so, and driver. So, to see, for me originally as a driver, it was always good to see the reaction of the crew, because they work tirelessly to get that car on the start line, and then you got to do your job. And it's good now that we've got a driver in there that you don't have to worry about, if she's going to do the job. And that she is, so that's fine. And now we've got to do our job. So it is very satisfying to see the car go down the racetrack, even standing outside of it.
Well, Phil, absolutely best of luck this weekend with the team. I mentioned before I would not be disappointed to see an all-female final in Top Fuel this weekend. Larry, you're going to be out there issuing the words to get these cars underway on Saturday.
Well, when I say gentlemen, start your engines, I say, I'll have to think of another gender, but
ladies and
gender
gentlemen.
bias.
You might have to. Yeah.
And you're going to have the book for sale in the pits?
Yes, I will.
Excellent. So thanks, guys, and that's all we've got time for this time on Down the Track. Make sure you join us next time. The Panel Show team are here at Willowbank Raceway for the next round of the 400 Thunder Championship. We're on the start line and there's something missing. No, it's not a race car, it's Jared McLean, my co-host. Unfortunately, he had a serious accident back in Perth. Isn't able to be with us this weekend, but we're looking forward to getting him back soon, guys.
Yes,
Absolutely.
come back.
Thanks soon, Jared. Looking forward to it.
We need you, mate.